You ever spend your whole life enforcing the law only to retire and find yourself harassed for flying the American flag? My name's Walter McBride. Retired sheriff. 30 years in service. 12 of them with the U.S. Marshals. I've chased cartel enforcers through Texas backroads, pulled bodies from floods, and delivered more subpoenas than most folks write emails. I moved to Pine Crest Hills thinking I'd finally earned some quiet. Pine Crest was supposed to be peaceful, gated, quiet, with porches wide enough to stretch your legs and neighbors who minded their own. That's what the real estate flyer promised. Luxury meets serenity. Turns out serenity had a dress code. And it was enforced by a 5'0" tyrant named Karen Dunley, president of the Pine Crest Hills Homeowners Association. First week, I got a letter, plain white envelope, gold embossed seal, PCH HOA, Community Standards Department. I thought it was a welcome note. It wasn't. Dear Mr. McBride, your American flag was displayed on a non-designated day. Per HOA Guidelines Section 14A. Flag displays are permitted only on federal holidays or with prior approval. The compliance team. I looked up from the letter. Flag still waving gently in the Nebraska breeze. And chuckled. I'd saluted that flag every day for 3 decades. Buried friends under it. But apparently, that didn't count for much in Pine Crest. At first, I let it go. You don't work law enforcement for 30 years without learning when to pick your battles. But it didn't stop. Week 2. Shrubbery trimmed at irregular height. Please ensure conformity to community landscape profile, 5 inches max deviation. Week 3, your garden bench is not in compliance. All outdoor furnishings must be visually harmonious. Please submit photo and manufacturer's description for approval. Visually harmonious? It was a bench. I built it myself, oak slats. Varnished. With my grandkids' initials carved into the arms. Apparently, homemade was offensive to Pine Crest's curated suburban aesthetic. Now, I'm not the type to kick up dust over every little thing. But when I got the 4th letter, cease display of non-conforming flag or face daily fines of $75, I decided enough was enough. I called the HOA office. A voice answered. Clipped and efficient. Pine Crest Hills Compliance Division. This is Courtney. Courtney, I said. This is Sheriff McBride. Pause. You mean Mr. McBride? No, I said. I mean Sheriff McBride. I served 30 years wearing the badge. And I'm trying to enjoy retirement without being fined for patriotism or how I trim my hedges. Sir, she said, if you have an issue with the guidelines, you may submit a written appeal to the board. Our president reviews appeals quarterly. Quarterly? Yes, sir. Our next review window opens in 63 days. I hung up that night. I walked out to my porch, sat on that non-harmonious bench with a cup of black coffee, and stared at the flag. It moved slow in the evening wind, soft and proud. My fingers clenched tighter around the mug. This wasn't about a flag. This wasn't about bushes or benches. It was about control. The next morning, I spotted her. Karen Dunley, HOA president. Platinum blonde bob. Aviator sunglasses. Tracksuit. Clipboard. She stood across the street, talking to one of the so-called HOA cops, 2 rent-a-car types in fake tactical vests. One of them pointed at my yard. I walked out. Slowly. Deliberate. She saw me and smiled like a woman who thought she had all the power in the world. Morning, Sheriff, she said sweetly, though she didn't mean it. Morning, Mom, I said, just as polite. Lovely weather. Shame about the non-compliant flag, she said, eyes scanning my porch like a general surveying enemy territory. You know, I said, back where I worked, when someone wanted to make a point, they just came to the front door and said it plain. They didn't send letters, or fines, or pretend cops. She stiffened. We maintain community standards. It's what keeps Pine Crest beautiful. No, Mom, I said. It's what keeps it under your thumb. That was the moment I saw it. A flicker behind those sunglasses. Contempt. Not for the flag. For me. For what I represented. A man she couldn't control. She turned sharply. I suggest you review your handbook, Mr. McBride. Because next time, we escalate. Then she marched off. Her two HOA cops flanking her like she was running a private militia. I stood there for a long moment. Coffee gone cold in my hand. Escalate, lady. You just knocked on the wrong door. You ever hear a knock that wasn't just loud, but intentional? The kind of knock that says, we're not asking. We're coming in. It was just past 11:30 p.m. when it happened. I was in my recliner. Lights low. Reading an old western I'd pulled from the library bin. When my porch light flickered, then stayed on. Motion sensor. Something or someone was on my property. Then the knock. No. Not a knock, a pound. 3 heavy thuds that rattled the frame. I set the book down. Slid my old service Glock from the drawer. And kept it low and out of sight. The days of needing it were supposed to be behind me. But instincts don't retire. I walked to the front door. Looked through the peephole, and froze. 3 men. Tactical vests. Black shirts. Combat boots. One had a radio clipped to his shoulder. Another had a baton tucked into his belt. The one in the middle? He was holding a clipboard and flashing a fake badge that looked like it came from a Halloween store. They weren't cops. They were HOA, Community Safety Corps. As Karen Donnelly had branded them. I cracked the door but left the chain latched. Can I help you? The middle one, tall. Maybe early 40s. With a goatee and wraparound shades like he was auditioning for SWAT, Suburbia, stepped forward. Walter McBride. Who's asking? We're with Pine Crest Hills Community Enforcement. You're in violation of multiple aesthetic regulations under Article 4. Section 9. I raised an eyebrow. You came to my house after 11 p.m. to talk about aesthetics. The second one, shorter but bulkier, chimed in, Sir. We need you to step outside. We need to conduct a perimeter compliance review. I nearly laughed. You want me to step outside so you can look at my bushes in the dark? He stiffened. Refusal to comply will result in an immediate citation and report to the HOA board. You know what else is a refusal to comply? I said calmly. Entering private property without a warrant. Which you don't have. And since you're not law enforcement, that clipboard doesn't mean squat. The third guy, silent until now, leaned in just close enough to say, You think this is a game? Old man? I looked him dead in the eyes. I think you don't realize whose door you just knocked on. He smirked. Then reached toward the door frame like he was going to push it open. That's when I dropped the chain. Just a second before he could touch it. I opened the door all the way and stepped out onto the porch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't raise my weapon. I just stood there, tall, calm, and every bit the man they weren't expecting. Let's get one thing real clear, I said. This ain't a base. It's a home. You don't get to play soldier on my porch because Karen gave you a shiny patch and a clipboard. The tall one squared up. We're authorized to enforce compliance. No. I replied. You're authorized to deliver letters and take pictures of grass. The second you start knocking on doors after midnight in tactical gear, you've crossed a line, and I promise you, I know exactly where that line is drawn. Silence. Then a voice from the edge of the lawn. Sir. Is everything okay? I turned. Neighbor. Mr. Willis. Early 60s. Retired school teacher. He was holding a flashlight and looked nervous. I nodded. Everything's fine, Will. Just a few folks confused about the limits of their jurisdiction. Willis hesitated. Then slowly walked closer. You're with the sheriff's office? The man with the goatee turned toward him. We're with the HOA, sir. Community Safety Corps. Willis blinked. That's supposed to mean something? You boys look like you're about to storm Fallujah. The goatee guy turned back to me. We'll be filing a report. Non-compliance. Threatening posture. I smiled. Make sure you spell my name right. They stood there for another second. Then turned and walked off, heavy boots thudding down my porch steps. One of them muttered something about uppity retirees. I didn't respond. I just watched them go. That old familiar itch in the back of my neck coming back to life. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my porch, Glock by my side, flag overhead, wondering just how deep this HOA power trip went. Turns out, I was only scratching the surface. It started with a dog barking. I was inside my workshop, the old barn I'd converted into a private space. Not for tools or hobbies, but for memories. My uniforms were there. My US Marshals plaques. The medals I never wore. The letters from partners long gone. A folded flag in a glass box. Things that mattered. The dog, Missy. My old hound, never barked without reason. When she let out that second howl, deep and frantic, I knew something was wrong. I stepped out, flashlight in hand. The yard was dark, but the shadows weren't still. 3 shapes moved fast along the fence line. Dressed in black. Tactical vests again. Community Safety Corps. Only this time, they weren't knocking, they were kicking. I was halfway to the barn door when the splintering crack echoed across the property. A boot through my side door. I shouted, "Hey!" But they didn't stop. They stormed in like it was a meth bust and not a retired man's shed. By the time I got to the entrance, the inside lights were flickering, flashlight beams sweeping across the room. I heard things crashing. Boxes hitting the floor. Glass breaking. And then the worst sound of all. Fire. The whoosh of something igniting. "No!" I shouted. Rushing forward. One of them turned, raised a baton, and slammed it straight across my ribs before I could react. I dropped hard, pain exploding through my side. The second one grabbed me by the jacket and threw me out the door like a bag of trash. I hit the ground. Hard. Gravel tearing skin off my palms. My vision spun. Heart pounding. My breath came in gasps. I tried to get up, but a boot pressed down on my shoulder. "You were warned," one of them said. "You didn't listen." And then, laughter. Behind them, the barn, my barn, glowed orange. Flames poured out the side windows. My flag case. My files. My history. All of it fed to the fire like garbage. They stood there, silhouetted by the inferno. Faces lit in flickers. Not a trace of concern. Not 1 ounce of hesitation. They were enjoying this. I coughed and wheezed, struggling to sit upright. "You're insane," I rasped. "You're non-compliant." The tallest one sneered. "And non-compliance has consequences." "You're not cops." He knelt beside me. "We're the only law that matters in Pine Crest." And with that, they turned and walked away, vanishing into the night, as my past turned to ash behind them. But what they didn't know, every inch of that barn, every corner, was under surveillance. Thermal cameras, motion sensors, solar-powered storage. Old habits die hard. I had it all. Their faces, their voices, the fire, the assault, everything. They just assumed I'd stay down. But I wasn't raised to lie still and take it. And I wasn't alone. The next morning, I woke up in a hospital bed. Concussion. Cracked rib. Smoke inhalation. Mild burns on my hands from trying to crawl back toward the flames. The attending nurse was a no-nonsense woman named Janet. She didn't ask questions. Just gave me water and said, "You've got visitors." I expected Linda Ramirez, former deputy, one of the few in the department I still trusted. What I didn't expect was who came with her. Royce Braddock, FBI. Retired. And still carried himself like he ran Quantico. Tammy Wynn, JAG attorney turned civil rights investigator. And Earl Bishop, one of the last marshals I rode with. They stood at the foot of the bed, all wearing the same expression. "We heard what happened, and we're not letting it go." Linda spoke first. "The HOA issued a community-wide bulletin this morning. Says you were removed from Pine Crest for aggressive behavior and threats to staff. Claims they found evidence of unlawful storage in the barn." Royce scoffed. "You mean the medals and old files they torched?" Earl leaned forward. "You still got eyes on the property?" I nodded slowly. "Backup drive. buried in the yard. Far side of the garage. Solar fed and offline. Tammy cracked a smile. God. I love retired feds. Linda's face hardened. They're not just violating housing codes anymore. They assaulted you. Committed arson. Falsified documentation. And tried to erase your identity. I met her gaze. Then let's remind them who they tried to erase. That night. They posted the footage. No announcement. No warning. Just a 3-minute video on a private drop link sent to a few carefully selected recipients, a news station. A veterans advocacy group. The state's attorney general's office. Within hours. It spread. It showed everything. The fake cops. The assault. The fire. The moment one of them called me a threat to HOA authority. Twitter lit up. So did Reddit. And the Pine Crest Hills HOA. They locked down their page. Deleted posts. And issued a clarification statement saying the video had been edited and manipulated to distort the truth. But it was too late. The world had seen the match. And now it was Walter McBride's turn to light the fuse. The town hall of Pine Crest had never seen a crowd this big. Rows of folding chairs packed with neighbors who used to wave at me and now sat stone-faced. Eyes flickering with something between shame and curiosity. Cameras lined the back wall, news crews. Citizen journalists, and one college student live streaming on a cracked iPad. The air buzzed with static tension. This was no HOA meeting. This was Judgment Day. I stood behind a podium that still had the Pine Crest Hills logo on it, gold leaf. A winding road. A tree no one could identify. I didn't care about the aesthetics. I came for truth. Linda Ramirez stood behind me, flanked by Deputy Carter and Tammy Wynn. On one side, Earl Bishop from the Marshal Service. On the other, Royce Braddock, arms folded, eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk. I adjusted the mic. My name is Walter McBride. I served as a U.S. Marshal for 30 years. After I retired, I moved to Pine Crest Hills, thinking I'd finally earned some peace. What I found instead, I paused, looking around the room, was a system that pretends to be about community, but is really about control. A murmur rippled through the room. You've all seen the videos, I continued. Some of you told yourselves they were faked. Some of you said, Walter must have done something to provoke it. But I want you to look at me now. I leaned forward slightly. They broke into my home, assaulted me, burned down my barn, erased decades of service and memory, and then painted me as the aggressor. Gasps. Audible ones. Especially from the row of board members in the front left. Karen Johnley wasn't here. She'd skipped town the day the video dropped. But her vice president, Greg the Clipboard Ellis, was sweating through his linen suit. And it wasn't just them, I said, flipping to the next slide on the projector. The screen behind me showed a chart, names, arrows, counties. I've spent the last 2 weeks tracking what Karen and her so-called community safety corps were part of. A revolving door. Washout security guards. Fired officers. Men with histories of violence shuffled through HOAs with no oversight. Tammy stepped forward, holding up a manila folder. We've turned over 63 personnel files to the state AG. Most of them were hired without background checks. Some had outstanding warrants. One had a domestic battery conviction sealed in another state. The room was silent. I clicked again, this time showing footage. The match. The fire. My voice screaming. The beating. I didn't show you this to scare you, I said. I showed it because hiding the truth is what let this happen in the first place. And then I turned away from the mic. I'm stepping down as sheriff. That one hit hard. Whispers. Murmurs. A few stunned looks. I raised a hand. I'm not doing it because I'm broken. I'm doing it because I'm finished. I didn't survive what they did to crawl back and keep sitting at the same desk while the same rot festers underneath. I pointed toward the back, where Eli stood. Pressed shirt. Steady hands. Fire in his eyes. I've recommended Eli Pfizer to the State Academy. The board approved it unanimously. He's got more backbone than most men twice his age, and he knows what injustice looks like. Because he's lived close enough to smell it. Eli gave a single nod. The crowd shifted. Some stood. Some clapped. I wasn't done. This department will no longer partner with HOA private enforcement. Period. Any entity that polices without legal authority will be disbanded and investigated. From this day forward, we enforce real law, not regulation masquerading as power. I turned to the board members. And if you think you'll just appoint another Karen to take her place, think again. The community will vote. And they'll vote with open books and public oversight. Greg Ellis opened his mouth. But Royce stepped forward, whispering something in his ear. Greg turned pale and sat back down. Linda took the mic next. We'll be launching a community oversight committee effective immediately. It'll include 3 residents, 2 department liaisons, and 1 rotating state auditor. No more secret citations. No more phantom fines. No more HOA cops. Applause. Real this time. Louder. I took a breath and stepped back. They tried to bury me, literally and figuratively. But all they did was give me the shovel. Now I was digging up every last root of the rot. And they were going to watch it happen. One public document at a time. 3 weeks after the town hall, the sky over Pine Crest turned grey, not stormy. Just heavy. The kind of sky that feels like it knows something's about to shift. At 7:14 a.m. 2 unmarked black SUVs rolled into the HOA headquarters. By 7:18, Karen Dunley was in handcuffs. She didn't go quietly. Wrapped in a faux cashmere shawl, sunglasses over bloodshot eyes, she shouted as the agents led her down the community center steps. I built this neighborhood. You people are nothing without me. The camera phones didn't miss a second. Neither did the local Channel 9 news chopper hovering overhead. Inside the sealed indictment, Count 1, criminal assault by proxy. Count 2, misuse of community funds, embezzlement of over $68,000. Count 3, conspiracy to impersonate law enforcement. Count 4, obstruction of justice. Count 5, retaliation against a government official. The charges came down like bricks, and Karen? She was just the first. By 9 a.m., 5 members of her so-called Community Safety Corps were also in custody. Some of them cried. One tried to run. The bald one, the same man who lit the match on my barn, had the nerve to look me in the eyes as they shoved him into the cruiser. You think this fixes anything? He growled. No, I replied. But it ends something. And that's a start. The Department of Homeland Security stepped in after that. Apparently, impersonating federal officers and coordinating cross-jurisdictional intimidation tends to get someone's attention. The investigation blew wide open. Turns out Pine Crest wasn't the only place Karen had her fingers in. She'd helped set up sister HOA enforcement groups in 3 neighboring counties. All of them with similar compliance squads. All of them now under scrutiny. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Justice isn't fireworks. It's a slow, steady hammer. A week later, I stood on the front lawn of the sheriff's department, wearing my full uniform for the last time. A breeze rolled through, just enough to flutter the American flag on the pole I'd had reinstalled, legally, right in front of the building. Reporters lined the walkway. Deputies stood in formation. Neighbors, too, some I hadn't spoken to in months. Many held their hats in hand. And beside me, wearing a crisp button-down, his new academy badge shining in the sun, stood Eli Fizer. The kid had fire. Discipline. He didn't flinch when the world turned its back. And more than anything else, he understood the weight of standing tall when others want you to shrink. I cleared my throat and faced the crowd. I've carried this badge through deserts, riots, and courtrooms. I've defended people who cursed me and protected people who tried to burn what I stood for. But today, I hang it up knowing this: justice cannot be destroyed by cowards who hide behind clipboards and by laws. I turned to Eli. A few months ago, this young man was fined for flying the Juneteenth flag on his porch. Karen called it unauthorized messaging. Well, today, the only message we send is this: Freedom doesn't come with HOA approval. The crowd broke into applause. Some loud. Some tearful. Eli stepped forward. His voice steady. I didn't think someone like me could ever lead here. Not after what happened. But Sheriff McBride taught me that sometimes the hardest part of leadership isn't standing in front, it's standing your ground. Then he looked at me. You taught me what it means to protect something real. I won't forget that. I removed my badge, bent and scratched. The one they didn't burn, and handed it to him. Then carry it well. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the sunset behind the ridge. No letters. No warnings. No HOA goons in tactical vests patrolling my street. Just quiet. I heard a car door shut down the block. Eli's cruiser. He'd started his first patrol that day. I watched him knock on a neighbor's door, Mrs. Whelan. Her porch light had been flickering for days. He helped her change the bulb. Respect starts small. A text buzzed on my phone. Linda Ramirez. They're calling him Little McBride now. I chuckled. Not bad. I looked out across the yard, where a new oak bench sat beneath the flag. It didn't match anything else on the street. It didn't need to, because it wasn't about blending in. It was about standing firm. And as long as that bench stood, as long as that badge passed hand to hand with honor, no HOA, no fake cop, no tyrant in yoga pants could erase what we built. They tried to burn me down. All they did was clear the way for something stronger to rise.